Ink Ribbon.
I don't usually get the chance to talk about handhelds on my channel, and that's different today because I get the rare opportunity to talk about a survival horror Game Boy Color game. And that game is Dino Crisis. Resident Evil's cool, futuristic, prehistoric cousin that is as neglected by Capcom as it is loved by fans. While on my usual internet hunts for content to share with you guys, I came across a cancelled Game Boy port of Dino Crisis. Sort of. What seems to be a pitch by the now closed Fluid Studios ended up seemingly going into some type of production and switching hands with a company called M4 Limited, who you may recognize as the company that made Resident Evil Gaiden. And all of these were connected to Virgin Interactive, I assume, since their logo is on the design document for it. Before you get excited, I should mention that the game doesn't actually exist as far as I could find. However, there was an interview with one of the developers, and apparently not only did the game actually function, but he has a backup of the ROM somewhere, although he lives in different countries, so there's a weird, it exists, but he doesn't have access to it basically, so it's out there somewhere. And even if a backup of the ROM exists, it's probably a very, very simple, short demo just to show off what it can do. I did try reaching out to see if I could find any of the developers who might have been a part of the dev team, but all the leads were dead ends because these companies don't exist anymore. So if any developers of the Dino Crisis Game Boy Color port happen to be watching this, please contact me or someone in the community. We would love to hear from you and know more about it. Around the time this was being developed, Capcom also had the infamous cancelled Game Boy port of the first Resident Evil in production and was shopping around to have the same treatment for Dino Crisis. One of the biggest hurdles was the size of the dinosaur sprites as well as having the backgrounds and cutscenes, but it would most likely have still played similar to the Resident Evil Game Boy port, which is playable online if you want to go hunt it down. Now, as far as what the game would have been, according to the design doc, it was intended to be a pseudo-port of the PS1 game. Not exact, but a scaled-down version of it, and wanted to one-up the Resident Evil port in every way, aiming for a more rendered look for the sprites versus the more pixel art look of the Resident Evil port still in development. The biggest change seems to come with the gameplay, specifically the linear nature of finding keys and opening doors. Instead, this game would focus on killing all the dinosaurs in an area within a time limit. This was also a way to break up the game for a portable format, which makes sense. Looking at the screenshots, it does seem impressive, even attempting to duplicate the puzzles in the game. And I don't know how, but apparently all 7 encounters with the T-Rex were going to remain in the game. And the last thing I wanted to mention, for anyone who does anything related to game development or sprite work, they kept referring to something called a puppet show, and it took me a while to realize that they were referring to a sprite animation. I'm not sure if that's an outdated term or something, but that was just amusing to me. Anyway, the reason for this is that they wanted to try to duplicate the feel of the FMVs without having to cut away and also limiting characters just using text boxes to speak. I mean, they were really ambitious with this. Though I wonder if every game starts off being this ambitious before having to cut things for technical or budget reasons. I mean, they talked about things like they wanted the moths around the lights fluttering, and they wanted to actually see Regina's blood on the floor when she's bleeding. And I know that they meant well, and that's awesome, but knowing what the Game Boy was capable of, I don't think any of that would have actually made it into the game. But hey, they meant well and it's appreciated. And while this game did get cancelled, a lot of the concepts and features went on to be retooled and make Resident Evil Gaiden later on. And speaking of portable Resident Evil, because I know someone in the comments is going to bring it up, there was another company called Raylight Studios that did a small tech demo of Resident Evil 2 running on the Game Boy Advance, and it is as short as it is impressive. I mean, Leon and the zombies are actually 3D models, which is a rarity on the handheld. Even though the game looked great, Capcom had lost interest in the Game Boy Advance by this point, and the swagger of Leon's walk was something that the GBA simply couldn't handle, and the tech demo was nothing more than just a demo. You can also find this online if you want to try it, but it's literally just this room and nothing else. There's no design doc, no backstory, Just this demo that made Capcom say, no thanks, we're good. And that was that. So that's all there is on this cancelled game, and I'm sad to say that Dino Crisis seems to be extinct. For now. Never say never. Now, I know for a fact that there are people at Capcom who do watch my videos on some capacity. So, you the viewers, if you would like to let them know how you feel about Dino Crisis, this is your chance to leave a comment that could potentially be seen by hopefully someone at Capcom who understands how much we love this franchise that I don't want to call a dead franchise because I don't want Dino Crisis to end up like Silent Hill. And that's the end of this video. I hope you guys found it interesting. I know I did. And I'm curious to know what you guys think. Do you think it should have actually been made for the Game Boy Color, or do you think it was just too ambitious? I still want to know why Resident Evil got canceled. In case you didn't know, the Resident Evil Game Boy port was like, I think it was like 95% done, and then they canceled it. And it's like, at that point, you might as well just release it, you know? So I don't know if this would have ended up just like that. I don't know if there was technical problems. I don't know what. If you enjoyed this video, then please give that like button your best 8-bit T-Rex roar. And if there are any other canceled games, especially handheld ones related to survival horror or Resident Evil that I may not know about, please let me know in the comments, because I really do love handheld. You guys have no idea. I just don't get a chance to talk about them on my channel because there's no survival horror games for any handhelds. And in case you think I'm lying, I'd like to introduce you to my custom Porygon Game Boy Advance SP that I had commissioned just for me because, yeah, I can't talk about this on Ink Ribbon, no one cares. You guys want to know about Resident Evil, you know? So it's a rare chance for me to actually talk about handhelds. Anyway, go drink some water, and until next time, I'm Kai Morgan, and as always, thanks for watching Ink Ribbon. And a very special thank you to all of my Patreon supporters and YouTube members. Your extra support means the world to me and helps me keep making content for you guys.